If you think animals forget, wait until you hear what this dog remembered, because today you're about to witness a kind of loyalty that humans rarely understand. And once you hear this story, you may never look at memory or love the same way again. People say animals live in the moment. They say animals don't hold on to memories the way we do, that they only react, survive, exist. But sometimes an animal appears in this world to prove the opposite, to show that memory can be deeper than logic, stronger than time, and more faithful than any promise a human could ever give. This is the story of a man named Daniel and a dog named River, a story about how a memory can save a life, even long after everyone thought it was lost. River wasn't the kind of dog you'd notice in a shelter. She didn't bark, didn't beg, didn't jump on the door like the others. She just sat there, curled in the back of the kennel, eyes wide and silent, as if trying to disappear into the shadows. The volunteers said she'd been like that since the day she arrived. No one knew where she came from, no collar, no chip, no owner looking for her, just a terrified dog that refused to respond to anyone. Until Daniel walked in. Daniel was an ex-firefighter, a man whose life had burned down long before he arrived at that shelter. He had lost his wife 3 years earlier in a car accident, and with her, he lost the version of himself that knew how to smile. He tried therapy, he tried work, he tried running, traveling, hobbies. Nothing filled the emptiness. The last thing he expected was that a dog would. But grief leads you to strange places. And on that quiet Tuesday afternoon, it led him through the glass doors of the Riverside Animal Shelter. He wasn't looking for a dog, he was just trying to feel something. When he passed River's kennel, he didn't see her at first. He only noticed the empty bowl, the untouched blanket, the faintest movement in the corner. He crouched down and whispered, "Hey there." At the sound of his voice, River lifted her head. Not all the way, just enough for their eyes to meet. And something happened, something Daniel couldn't explain. It wasn't recognition. He'd never seen this dog before. It wasn't joy. She wasn't wagging her tail. It wasn't fear. She wasn't shrinking away. It was more like a pause, as if her mind suddenly opened a door and tried to remember something important. And for the first time in months, Daniel felt a tiny crack in the cold wall around his heart. He whispered again. River blinked, then, slowly, silently. She stood up and walked toward him. The volunteers were stunned. "She doesn't do that," one of them said. "She doesn't go near anyone." But she went to him. She pressed her nose into the palm of his hand, closed her eyes, and exhaled a long, trembling breath. The kind of breath an animal releases only when they feel safe. Daniel didn't understand why. He didn't know her story, but he adopted her that same day. River didn't bark. She didn't play. She didn't make noise at all. She followed Daniel everywhere silently, from the kitchen to the hallway to the bedroom, never more than 2 steps behind him, as if trying to protect him from something only she could sense. Daniel tried everything to help her open up. Walks in quiet parks, treats, toys, gentle words. But River didn't react to any of it, except one thing. Every night she stood in front of the attic door, stiff, alert, staring at it for minutes, sometimes hours. She refused to go upstairs, refused even to let Daniel touch the doorknob. He thought it was trauma. Maybe the attic reminded her of somewhere dark she'd been trapped before. Maybe she associated it with something bad. But the truth was something else entirely. One evening, after a long day of work, Daniel opened the attic door without thinking. River lunged, not to bite, not to attack, but to block him. She jumped between him and the staircase, shaking violently, whining for the first time since he'd brought her home. Her eyes said everything. "Don't go up. Please don't go up. Not alone." It was the insistence that unsettled him. Dogs have instincts, yes, but this was different. This wasn't fear of the attic. This was River remembering something, a memory she couldn't forget. It took 3 weeks before River finally walked up the stairs on her own. It was late at night. Daniel had fallen asleep on the couch with an old photo album open beside him. Photos of his wife, laughing, hugging him, kissing him, living. He didn't even know River had been watching. When he woke up, she wasn't there. He found her upstairs, standing in the attic, frozen, staring at a dusty wooden trunk in the corner, a trunk he hadn't opened since the accident, a trunk filled with his wife's belongings, clothes, letters, a broken wristwatch, a red scarf he bought her on their first holiday trip together, her old sketchbook. River wasn't sniffing, wasn't exploring, wasn't curious. She was remembering. Her head tilted, her ears low, her expression soft and aching, like a person trying to recall a dream they once loved. Daniel opened the trunk slowly. River stepped back. Then, as he lifted the red scarf, everything changed. River whimpered, a sound full of pain and recognition. She pressed her face against the scarf, buried her nose in it, inhaled deeply, and began to tremble. Daniel didn't understand. He dropped to his knees. "River, what is it? What's happening?" She pushed the scarf toward him, then toward the doorway. It was like she was trying to say, "Follow this. Remember this. There's something you need to see." And she led him, not downstairs, not outside, but to the back of the attic, where a single box sat under the window. A box he had never opened. A box labeled in his wife's handwriting. "For the day you're ready." He froze. His hands wouldn't move. River nudged the box gently, once, twice, then turned to him, eyes wide and pleading. It was River who made him strong enough to open it. Inside were letters, dozens of them, written by his wife during the year before she died, letters he never knew existed. The first one began with, "If you're reading this, it means something, or someone, finally brought you here." Daniel broke. The grief he'd kept buried for years poured out like a flood, and River stayed beside him, not moving, not whining, just present. She knew this pain. She remembered this loss. She had lived through something just like it. Because this wasn't the first time River had led someone to the memory they were trying to hide. River's past was a mystery, until the memories began to surface. One morning, a storm rolled over the city. Thunder, wind, rain slamming against the windows. River panicked, but not like a normal dog. She ran to the front door, scratching, whining, desperate, not to escape, to warn, to help. Thunder triggered something inside her, a memory so strong it hijacked her entire body. Daniel followed her. He didn't understand what she wanted. But when he opened the door and stepped outside with her, everything made sense. The storm smelled like smoke, like burning wood, like a fire. River dragged him toward the old warehouse district behind the neighborhood. He struggled to keep up. She moved like she was following a map burned into her mind. When they reached an abandoned building, she froze, and Daniel saw it. Someone was trapped inside. An elderly man, injured, unable to move, coughing from the smoke of a small fire that had started in the corner of the building. River barked, loudly, clearly, for the first time since he'd adopted her. She didn't hesitate. She ran into the building despite the smoke. And suddenly, Daniel understood. This wasn't instinct. This was memory. Everything about River's fear of the attic. Her attachment to him. Her connection to smoke, storms, trapped spaces. It wasn't random. River had once belonged to another man. An old man. A widower. Someone who lived alone in a small house outside the city. Someone River had loved deeply, the way she now loved Daniel. One night, lightning struck that old man's home. A fire spread before he woke up. River barked, scratched, pulled, tried to drag him out, but he collapsed before she could save him. River stayed. She stayed until help arrived. She stayed through smoke and fear and heat. She stayed until rescue forced her out, and she never saw her owner again. That's why she never barked. That's why she feared houses, attics, storms. That's why she remembered grief so well, because she had lived it once already. And she wasn't going to lose someone again. Not Daniel, not this time. They saved the elderly man together. River lead the way, Daniel carried him out, and the paramedics took him to safety. Everyone said Daniel was the hero. He knew the truth. The hero was the dog who remembered. The dog who refused to forget loss. The dog who refused to lose another person she loved. The dog who used her memory, her trauma, her pain, to save a stranger. And in that moment, everything connected. River didn't come into Daniel's life by accident. She came because she'd been through the same pain he had, because she had been waiting for someone whose scars matched her own, because she remembered what love looked like, even when he had forgotten. Grief had broken them both. Memory brought them back to life. In the months that followed, River changed. Slowly, at first, then beautifully. She barked again, not in fear but in joy. She played with other dogs at the park. She slept peacefully at the foot of Daniel's bed. She stopped staring at the attic door, because the memory inside it had already been set free. But the biggest change wasn't in River. It was in Daniel. He began writing again, laughing again, living again. He visited the elderly man they rescued. River recognized him instantly, her tail wagging with a joy he hadn't seen before. And for the first time in years, Daniel understood something powerful. Memory doesn't only hurt. Memory heals. Memory saves. Memory guides. Memory loves. River remembered her old owner, not with pain but with gratitude. And now Daniel remembered his wife the same way. River didn't replace her. She didn't fill the empty space. She showed him that love doesn't disappear, it just changes shape. The people we lose, the animals we save, the memories we carry, all of it remains alive as long as we're brave enough to face it. River wasn't just a rescue dog, she was a bridge, a living reminder that even broken hearts and broken memories can find their way back to the light if someone is willing to walk beside them. And in the end, River didn't save just one life, she saved two. If River's story touched your heart, help it reach someone who needs it. Like, share, and follow for more stories that honor the incredible bond between humans and animals. Your support keeps these stories alive.